Well, welcome everybody. We are on a brand new workshop, Communicate and Understand. I'm Sabrina Schottenhamel, and I am co-hosting this today with my friend that I met on LinkedIn, which is pretty cool, Kyle Crooke. Welcome, Kyle.
Thank you,
And
Sabrina.
we have our biggest fan here, Angela.
Yep.
She's my biggest fan and follower. I love you dearly.
I love you too.
So all right, so let's get started. I'm going to introduce Kyle and then he's going to go into his expertise and then I will share a little bit more. So Kyle Crook, oh, where to go? Here it is. After graduating from the University of Florida with his MBA, Kyle has spent the last 8 years in various consulting roles. Recently, he and his dad, Richard, opened their own business. The name of their business is Raise Your Revenue by Sandler, where they help business owners raise the bar for their organizations. Kyle and Richard work directly with business owners, their teams, their teams on growing their business strategically. Ooh, lots of stuff, lots of big words in there. On growing their business strategically and sustainably. They accomplish this by leveraging, wow, I should have done some exercises in the beginning.
It's okay. It's all good.
They accomplish this by leveraging assessments, training, and accountability metrics to ensure their clients are getting the most out of their investment. So I will let Kyle take it away. He's going to be talking about the DISC framework and how to identify if someone is introverted or extroverted and how to approach the conversation style. So I will let you take it away, Kyle.
Thank you, Sabrina. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Angela, do you have any prior experience or understanding of the DISC methodology?
I do actually. I love
Okay.
stuff like this. Yes.
Okay, so have you been assessed on your DISC style?
I think at some point I have. So my first reference with this was actually through a book called Wired That Way. So I interpreted everything and filtered it through that language.
Gotcha.
So yeah. So that's
Gotcha.
kind of where I am.
All right, very cool, Angela. I appreciate that. Cool. So for this one, I'm going to focus it on hopefully, Angela, do you see what I see here? The DISC, this quadrant. Okay, perfect. So we're going to focus here on the extroversion on the right and the introversion on the left. So typically I do longer disc workshops. We'll talk about what each one means, how to adapt to it, and so on and so forth. But for these 10 minutes, I wanted to give a general understanding of each of the four components, and then how we can manage it if we're extroverted or if we're introverted, and how we can adapt to the other communication styles. So on the right side, you have the D and the I, which are more extroverted, as you see in the middle there. So the D stands for the dominant style. The I stands for influencer or influential. And then on the more introverted side of the left, you've got the S and the C. S stands for steady relator or steadiness, and C is for compliant. And so what this means for extroversion or introversion, normally it means where you get your most energy from other people or from being on your own. For this one, it's more so of what you can see facially. So the extroversion, if you see someone who is smiley, someone who is talking a lot, strong eye contact, that's what we mean here by extroversion. And by introversion, it's someone who's a lot more calm. They're probably not giving as many facial emotions, and they're definitely a lot more quiet. And so what we're going to learn here is the DISC, a little bit about each, and then how we can apply it to understanding the extroversion versus introversion styles. Does that make sense, Angela?
Yep.
Perfect. So for the D style, Angela, do you mind, can you go ahead and read off those first 5 bullet points?
Oh, did you say me? Sorry.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Is assertive, maybe blunt, is demanding, very impatient, interrupts others.
And then the bottom 3 bullets really resonate with me from an understanding of the DISC style for dominance. They make decisions quickly. They may talk to many people at the same time. They might have difficulty understanding others' viewpoints and feelings. So if we're able to identify any of these traits, whether it's the demanding, impatient, especially if they're in a hurry, make a lot of decisions really, really quickly. You can associate them as a D style. You can see, okay, they're definitely extroverted, but their extroversion is more so in terms of how they think and then spewed in how they communicate with people. The big thing to realize if you understand someone's a D style and they're extroverted is that whenever they're speaking, it's going to be aggressive, it's going to be fast, but it's not meant as a personal attack. A lot of people who are not D style find these people very intimidating. Think the four or five people from Shark Tank: Mark Cuban, Kevin O'Leary, Damon John. Very aggressive, blunt in your face. But if you show them the value that you have, and if you let them lead the conversation and let them have their sense of leadership in there, you're able to influence them accordingly. So if you're an introverted like myself, a quick little thing about me is that I am an S and a C. So I am purely on the introverted side. So when I identify someone as a D style dominance, I make sure to ask them very few questions. When I do answer them, it's very succinct, but I also make sure to provide them with different options of things to do or actions to take. So if it's a friend who's a D style, instead of saying, hey, let's go to Cheddar's for dinner, I'll say, hey, here's these 2 or 3 options. Which one works best for you? That's a way to get them to feel leadership, to feel influential, and to get their extroversion, ego stroked and be able to have a great conversation at Cheddar's that night. So that's just, I know it's a very silly example, but one way of being able to understand what style someone is and being able to see, hey, the introversion, extroversion, and how we can essentially reconcile the two. Does that make sense so far, Angela, Sabrina?
Absolutely.
Awesome. What's interesting is a lot of people come off, especially professionally, being a D style, but when you look at their assessment, there's not much D style in them. Only 10 or 15% of the population is naturally a D style, which goes to show that with the media that we've seen and the expectations that we have on being a successful entrepreneur, being a successful parent, is that we adapt a lot of this style, when in reality, it's not necessarily the case. So for the I style, for someone who's influential, they talk a lot, they're very animated. These are essentially the chatty Cathys. So they're very similar to the D style, that they're extroverted, they're going to be very talkative, especially for someone like me who's an S or C. I don't like that. It really drains me and it really frustrates me having to reel them back into the conversation. The easiest way for me to handle this is in any conversation I have with someone who's an I, is to give them a few minutes at the front of the conversation where they can talk about anything and everything that they want to, make them feel like they are being influential. Because again, like the Ds, they want their ego stroked a bit to make sure that they're having leadership or influential impacts. And then throughout the conversation is asking different questions to get them back on track, which will help me as an SC be able to reconcile that. And then at the end of the conversation, give them free rein and talk about anything and everything that they want. The interesting thing with the I style is for D, you want to give them options and not solutions because they want ownership of that decision. For I's, they might get, I want to say this affectionately, a little bit scatterbrained. If you give them too much to talk about, too much to think about, they're not going to make a decision. So for an I style, if it's the same thing about going out to dinner, don't say, hey, let's go. I recommend Cheddar's or Yard House or Voodoo Bayou, yada, yada, yada. They're going to talk about how delicious it is for 30 minutes, not making. So for them, you say, hey, I think we should go to Cheddar. It's a great price and it's a really great ambiance. Let's go there. So that's the different way to understand an I style and how to communicate with that. Does that make sense, Angela?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, perfect. So again, for those 2 extroverted styles, for Ds and Is, the importance is to understand if they're a D or an I, and then being able to use questions and control the conversation that best suits them. Now, on the other side of things, which is something I'm a lot more comfortable with because these are both my styles, the S style is someone who is super steady and super easygoing. They always appear calm, they listen carefully, they nod and go along. The only issue with someone who's an S style is that they'll give you a, hey, let me think it over, or they're not going to give you their opinion unless you get it out of them. So as someone who's introverted like myself, I'm very much an S style. As I'm sure you've seen here, I nod a lot, I love listening. I need to make sure that people who are extroverted understand that I'm engaged, not just by those social cues of the head nodding and listening, but me being able to break out my shell a bit more and be able to provide an assertive opinion at some point in the conversation. And a great way to do that is if I'm not comfortable doing it outright, a great thing when talking with someone who's a D or an I is if they say something really good, compliment what they say, really, hey, that was a really great comment. Tell me more about that, or ask a follow-up question. That almost has the same result in being able to validate them, their style, and be able to get them to continue talking and give us some validation without us needing to really drain our energy and have to keep giving opinion after opinion. So it's a great way for any introverts to be able to still socialize, but also maintain our own internal internal energy levels. And last but not least is the C style. That's in the top left. A C style is very similar on the outside to an S style. They seem very calm, very patient, very easygoing. But for a C style, is that they're very analytical. They're thinking all the time. And if you talk to them and they don't agree with it based on a logical or analytical reason, they might criticize and lash out. Similar to the D style, it's nothing personal. It's if they take offense to something, it's purely logical. And so being able to understand who a C style is, if you're talking to them or asking them questions, understand that not only are they listening to you a lot, but they don't feel afraid to call you out on stuff. And so instead of taking that offensively, take that as an opportunity either to double down and say, hey, this is why we should go to Cheddar's tonight, or hey, this is why we should move forward with that option, or say, you know what, that you actually bring up a really good point, validate them, and then come up with a different course of action. And again, just like an S, they're introverted, so sometimes you need to engage them and to really get their opinion as well. And so, Angela, what I have here, and I'm happy to send this content to you afterwards. This is my last slide here, I absolutely promise. So again, this is a much shorter version of the longer workshop, but what I wanted to communicate is for the D's and I's, you see the top there, they're very extroverted. S's or C's very introverted, so being able to identify them up front will allow any conversation, professionally and personally, to really move things forward. So for someone who's a D style, stick to business. You don't need to be overly conversational. And then, like we talked about, give them options, not solutions, because they want to own whatever decision they have. For an I style, be warm with them, talk more with them, only give details if they ask, because if you give too much information, it kind of not only say confuses them, but overwhelms them a bit. For someone who's an S style, slow down, build trust, because they want things to be calm, easygoing, give them time to think things over. And then if someone is a C style, that's the only style where you should give them too much information. They love information and getting into the nitty gritty. Any other style, they're overwhelmed by it, except the C style. And then make sure, like the S style, to have a relaxed, calming voice and don't pressure them to make decisions. And I want to hand it back to Sabrina. I think we stuck around to about 10 minutes there. So hopefully
Yeah.
I hit that on that. And Angela, once Sabrina gets some really great information, we'll have some time afterwards for Q&A. Happy to provide advice in any way that I can.
Great job. And yes, that was like 10 minutes on the dot.
Perfect.
Good job, Kyle. Yeah. All right. So I just have 3 key skills that I want to share. And, as Kyle was kind of going through those, I was like, okay, yeah, I can see, I think compliance, the C is my nephew, Jonah, who's very introverted yet analytic. And I'm like, I'm going to have so much fun with this, just, knowing a little bit deeper, the people around me. And that's the whole point of this workshop, is so that people can really understand who they are and who they're married to, who their kids are, who their friends are. And, then we can communicate and understand each other better. We can empathize towards our counterparts. So my 3 key skills that I'm going to share with you today are building trust and speaking up. We're going to talk about the technology advantage, which who knows what that means. And then the third one is embracing our strengths and weaknesses. So to start us off, how do we build trust and speak up? Especially for the introverts, well, we need to know who we are and where we fall on the DISC method, and really, build trust. So if you're an introvert, you tend to be very internal thinking and, like Kyle was mentioning, analytical. We love to listen. We love to observe. So in an environment with other extroverts, it's important to create that safe space or safe environment. And I have done this when I host my Networking for Introverts group once a month. I've created a safe space for my fellow introverts to come together. We share a topic, we discuss, everyone speaks up, and it's been amazing. So that's why I continue to run that each month, because it's been very supportive for my fellow introverts. So a little bit more on building trust and being able to speak up. For the extroverts, encouraging collaboration with introverts, because the extroverts are really good with the details up front, and the introverts are really good with the behind the scene details, like the attention to detail, all the little things, just putting them all together, not directly up front, but over time, we put everything into place. And then the other part is knowledge about how you best communicate, so that comes with confidence. So if you, and we're going to talk about that in the second key skill, because that's utilizing some technology. So we'll just hop on over to the skill number 2, which is technology advantage. And the whole reasoning behind this is, especially for the introverts, if you're in a big setting at your office, or you have a big Zoom meeting or an in-person meeting where you're the introvert that's a little more intimidated, using technology can help the introvert shine a little bit more. So especially with using Zoom meetings or team meetings or whatever kind of virtual meeting, or if it is an in-person meeting, allowing the introverts to take notes and to formulate their answers and answer towards the end versus speaking up front. And if they need a little bit more time, then utilizing email, text, or possibly a phone call, but that's the last resort for introverts. So using technology is just really key to, especially for the introverts, to getting them to speak up and share their well put together response. Because as Kyle mentioned, we don't always like to speak out loud and process out loud. We like to take our time and think about it and write it out and analyze and rework it and talk to another introvert about it. So, just by using the technology to our advantage, that's what I'm talking about when we need to take a little bit more time to respond and formulate our answers to the best of our ability. And it's interesting because as I was putting this together in a little more detail, I was finding some great words and kind phrases and some verses that were reinforcing to each of, well, this point especially. And this one goes for both introverts and extroverts. And the verse is from James 1:19. It says, "Be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger." So I'm just going to put that out there for the introverts and the extroverts, because sometimes thank you, Kyle, for putting that in there. Sometimes the extroverts can get frustrated with us if we're not speaking up right away, or vice versa. The extroverts are just talking over the introverts. And, we need to both speak and listen without feeling angry or frustrated. And then that brings me to my last key skill, which is the third, and that is embracing our strengths and weaknesses. So by knowing ourselves and studying the DISC and figuring out where our strengths are, where our weaknesses are, then we can just really understand ourselves better, and we can understand those around us. We can use our strengths to our advantages, and we can use our weaknesses to work towards getting a little bit stronger. And a lot of times I like to call myself a developing extrovert, and I came up with a little definition. So for my definition of a developing extrovert, we can all learn new skills to improve, but that doesn't mean it changes who we are. because like I said, we can all learn a new skill and it's great to learn skills, but we're not changing into an extrovert if we are just an introvert. Yeah, we can shift and change a little bit based on our energy or the people that we're surrounded by, but we're always going to be more internal thinkers. We like to be alone and recharge our batteries, or in small groups like this or over Zoom, because that's where our strengths lie best. And then we can just be more open and empathetic towards each other. When we understand who we are and how we communicate and how we speak to each other, everything just seems to work out better. When you speak up for yourself, when you stand strong, when you know you have a voice and you can use it when the time is right. So when we put all these three skills into practice, we can use our strengths to shine. And that is one of my verses too. And it's from Matthew. It's like, everyone lights a lamp and, you don't put it underneath your desk. You put it on the desk so it shines for all to see. So that's one of my verses that really resonates with me. And so now that you know your strengths and weaknesses, we can refer back to the DISC method. You can even, take that chart and study it a little bit more, give it to your friends, your spouse, your kids. Just have a little fun with it. And then when we work together, the extroverts and introverts. So the extroverts, if you're working together on a project or a workshop or something, the extroverts, I think I mentioned this a little bit ago, are really great to land the deal because they're outgoing, they're outspoken, they can get all the details up front, but then the introverts do all the behind the scenes work. And so working together, you know that you have a great, strong team, a strong foundation, and you can execute in a timely fashion. All right. So, speaking of how Kyle and I met on LinkedIn, I also met this wonderful woman. Angela actually met her on one of the introverts calls. She has a program called CONVERLATION, and it's how to put limits on your electronic devices for, just people in general. She has couples, she has a family one, and walks you through. It's just simple programs where you watch the videos. There's an interactive one too for families, but you watch the videos and then you put some things into practice, some limitations for yourself on your phone so that you're more present in your conversations, because we are all just hooked to our phones. And a lot of times when someone's talking, we're looking down and we're like, what? What did you say? So Kathy's programs are really great. I'm going to put the link to her programs in the chat towards the end. But I think it fits perfectly with our topic for today. So those are the 3 key points that I wanted to cover for today. I also want to give you 3 takeaways that you can implement today. Just some practical advice, which I love to do. So the first one is speaking clearly and setting up boundaries. Yes, that's a whole nother topic and subject that takes a little bit more time. But if you can figure out how to set up some boundaries for yourself and for others, then you will have the quiet advantage to speak up and be heard when the time is right. And also just a little side note is using good eye contact when you're having a conversation. Because if you are a little bit of introvert and more timid, especially around an extrovert or extroverted people, if you have good eye contact, you're more apt to come across as confident if you're looking at them in the eye and your shoulders are back and you're really just focused on them. The second one is speaking up. Speak up with confidence. And this is just some practical things that you can use right away, is just saying, please allow me to stay home when I'm all peopled out. Help me to avoid places with large crowds. and then do your best to leave me behind and or leave me in the shadows more or less instead of putting me in the center of attention, because like, we don't like to be embarrassed, we don't like to be put on the spot. So just some practical things that you can think about and say when you are speaking up and feeling confident. And then, of course, the third one is speaking kindly. And I have a quote from Mother Teresa that I want to share with you. It's, kind words can be short and easy to speak, but their echoes are truly endless. And I will leave you with a few kind words and phrases that can also encourage you. It's from Proverbs 12:25. Anxiety weighs down the heart, but a kind word cheers it up. And so that, I just want to finish it there. Is there any feedback or questions or interactions that we want to talk about now?
Well, I will just say that this was so awesome. It's so interesting as I am hearing sort of the different personality types and their frustrations and what they like. I've never heard like to not be offended if someone, like, especially with the introverted style that is the compliance.
Yep.
That they're not afraid to disrupt, even as an introverted person. And I've thought about that, as I'm sort of more the like peaceful, phlegmatic person that just like doesn't want the space disrupted at all. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of chameleon into the space, which can mean like that I want less interaction with people because it's like a constant fluctuating, like what does the room need? And but I just feel like so empowered to know like that I don't have to be offended by that. They're not meaning anything against me. And I kind of get triggered when that happens. And so, yeah, that's just them trying to process and understand, and the logical component of trying to figure out like, hey, unless you can convince me of another way, like you almost have to convince me that this is the best idea. And then if you can convince me, I'm willing to go for it. But yeah, that was just so good. I just appreciate you giving all of like the questions, like when to ask questions, when to give more details, when to give less details. It's just brilliant.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, for that C compliance style, it's not only that, they're not going to attack you personally, it's they're protecting their own ego because they take great pride in the way that they view things in their system and their process. And so they're trying to protect themselves. So any criticism they have is equally towards you for, objecting, but also towards themselves. So being able to either, and the great thing is two things are going to happen. One is, you're going to say, oh, you know what? Compliance style, you were absolutely right in your thinking. They're going to feel great about that. Or two, they'll realize, hey, there's a better way. You're doing it for them and you're building credibility with them. So that down the road, you can minimize further disruption because they will trust you more. So it's really a win-win once you get past the, hey, a C style, a D style. They're not doing it to antagonize me personally. They're doing it if it's a C style to protect their own way of thinking. A D style, they just want to get things done really, really quickly. So they really don't think too much about how their words implicate, on other people.
Interesting. So interesting. I love stuff like this so much. I think it's the best way to like almost to live in safety, to know other people well, and to both care for them well, but also to care for yourself and your space well. My question also would be, how do you get an extrovert, sort of that more dominant personality, to hear the quieter, softer, or maybe to help them process more out loud? I feel like the very like choleric personality is like, I like to call the shots. I'm kind of the natural leader, and they don't necessarily listen very well. Especially for those who are a little bit more soft-spoken. So how would you approach like a leader who is that choleric leader and try to get them to process a little bit out loud with you?
That's a great question. I have one client, he is 100% C style. I've never seen someone who is 100% C style. His boss is, so he's the executive vice president. His boss is a buddy of his for the last 27 years, and he is at least 80% D style. And so how he describes it is over the years, the boss is very, can be very, I don't want to say temperamental, but say, hey, this is how I think, do this, get this done. But over the years, my client who's C style has been able to prove it's pretty much say, hey, instead of acting on this now, how about you just give me 24 hours research, come up with a recommendation, and we'll move forward from there. And the reason why he says that is because for a D style, they hate having to wait. If you tell them wait another week, 2 weeks, you automatically lose authority with them. We say, hey, I hear you. Let's act on this now. Let me research a little bit to help protect some of our blind spots, and I'll get back to you tomorrow. It's a way to be
That's
able to
so good.
say, hey, the D style knows that you're looking out for them, and he feels like he's still in power in the decision, and he only has to wait 24 hours. If he has to wait longer than that, then he'll get, he or she will get a little bit frustrated with that. But that's a way to balance. You're still in control. I hear you. I want to do what's best for you. Give me just a wee bit of time. And then granted, there's some cases where it legitimately does take longer. He's built that relationship to where he can ask, say, you know what, give me 48 hours or give me, 3 days. This is why. And then communicating that. So it's just building that over time and having them understand that you need a little bit of time to make sure that their decisions are the right ones.
So good. I had one more question, if I could. When you are an introverted leader and you're building a team, how do you protect the space for your other introverted people when you have some like choleric personalities within that group?
So that's a great question. I actually right now, one of my clients, they're actually a local client here in the Delray Boynton Beach area in South Florida. They are a large sales organization. Most of the time, they're like 90% of their people are I style, right? Because they talk a lot, they like building relationships. This particular client, most of them are C style, which is really interesting. So they're the more clerical, reserved. So for me, when I'm leading training sessions with them, whether it's with their leaders or not, with the salespeople, it's not natural for them to contribute and ask questions. And so for me, I'm actively going around each person, calling them out in a very nice way, not saying, hey, you have to answer this question, but saying, hey, normally I share first and I say, hey, I had a problem with this prospect last week. I lost them because of this, or that. Does anyone else have any similar experiences they want to share? So that normally is helpful. Me taking the lead and being vulnerable allows them the opportunity to share something that they might think is uncomfortable. So that's number one. The number two is once I do get the people talking, is instead of me giving them advice, is asking them questions and then asking others to give them feedback. It's a great way because they see each other's peer to peer, and it's kind of like popcorn, right? When I'm giving someone a little bit of room to ask questions and then someone else answers them. And because they're peers and they feel comfortable because they've had similar experiences, it allows them to open up. So those are the two ways. Is one, be vulnerable, ask questions for them to open up. And then two, when they do start opening up, instead of me leading it, just be silent and wait for other people to start responding.
So interesting.
Take myself out of it, essentially.
Gotcha. Yeah. I think I think the like true, I think this stat is right, but the true like choleric or the dominant personality is only like 10% of the population or something. It's kind of a small.
Yes, for the dominant style is only 10% of the population. But the interesting thing about DISC is even if only 10% is a natural D style, there's another thing called adaptive D style. It's hey, based on the expectations of how you think you need to be in this professional role or how you need to be in this relationship. The adaptive style, there could be like 25 or 30% of that more DISC style, even though at the heart of it, there's not that many. So it's understanding a person's role, how they perceive that role. And so that's why it's important instead of to typecast someone and say, oh, that person's a C. Well, maybe in that situation. But if you get to know them personally, if you see their triggers, and instead of making it really complex, just take it, hey, this person is presenting this to me now. They have strong eye contact. they're talking quickly, they want results now. He's presenting a D style to me. This is how to respond. So just taking it with a grain of salt. But yeah, it's very, very interesting for sure.
Mm. I've noticed too, like when I have like collaboration, if there is one like D style with a lot of introverts, I sometimes have a hard time because or maybe it's the influencer, maybe it's the I style, but like since they're more willing to say, hey, this is how I think it should go, how do I create? And so then the more introverted people will back off a little bit more and maybe not collaborate as much because they're a little bit concerned about how someone will take the information. It's just been I feel like as if I am leading that team, then I have to become dominant in some ways in order to kind of corral the group to ensure that like collaboration is happening and everyone gets heard and kind of simmer some people down a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah, no, it's as elementary as it is. What I've found is before that conversation, like structuring the conversation and literally saying, hey, for any idea here, in order to prevent groupthink and just go with the flow, I'm going to assign someone to be devil's advocate. So whatever great idea we have, there's going to be one person assigned to combat that. And whether you agree with, with that or not, you're going to have to do that. And so there's a time where that person's either going to present it and then feel comfortable doing it, or they say, you know what, honestly, that's a really great idea. I don't have anything to contest that. Then you can ask, okay, who wants to play devil's advocate for this one? So having that expectation there, so that's saying, hey, we want to make sure that all ideas are vetted and that everyone's contributing. And it's a fun way because you're making that expectation so people don't feel bad for giving controversial, negative responses because you're actually welcoming it and you're requiring it to actually move good ideas forward.
That is so genius. I love that so much.
Yeah, I love whenever possible to make things really, really simple and just focusing on one or two things like, hey, we need that devil's advocate role or we're not moving forward with this. And sometimes the people who presented that really good idea, like, shoot, I'll put a devil's advocate role because I think this is a great idea. So, see what you think. So it's another thing where just having that one kernel turn into a whole bag of popcorn.
So good. Awesome. Well, I feel empowered to go into my next leadership call.
Yay!
Excellent.
Yeah. Cool,
That's
cool.
awesome. Great questions, great responses, Kyle. Thank you guys for being here, and let's just see where this takes us. Could take the time to watch it and give us a little bit of feedback so we can improve upon it and run this again and grow it bigger and bigger and bigger, because I really feel in my heart that this is such an important topic, especially nowadays when a lot of people are, we're in our phones and we're just preoccupied with ourselves, and we need to not only focus on ourselves and our boundaries, but we need to focus on other people too. So, all right. Well, great job. And thank you again. Anything else you want to close with, Kyle?
No, Angela, those are really insightful questions. I appreciate that. And definitely, Sabrina, I'm going to I'll send over my slides to you. Please feel free to send those over to Angela in case they're helpful for her.
Perfect.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Have a good day.
Awesome.
You
Thanks, y'all.
too. Bye.